Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Ozcast.
Okay, so today we're going to jump right into it.
Yeah.
We're talking about the very first SEC crypto roundtable.
Right.
Like, this was kind of a big deal because it brought together
Oh, absolutely.
people from both sides of this issue. Like,
Yeah.
how do we regulate crypto?
Yeah, you had really all the biggest players
Yeah.
at the table for the first time.
And this is, this is after President Trump was elected and Gary Gensler left the SEC.
Yeah, and it's interesting now. Gensler's teaching financial technology at MIT,
Oh, wow.
which is kind of ironic given his
Yeah.
previous stance.
Well, you know what they say, if you can't beat them,
Right.
join them.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Mark T. Uyeda, the acting chairman at the time,
Mm-hmm.
he created this new crypto task force at the SEC.
Exactly.
And they really focused on one essential question.
Yeah. What makes a crypto asset a security?
Right.
Which, that's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
That everybody's trying to figure out.
And to figure that out, they brought in Uyeda himself,
Right.
Hester Pierce,
Yeah.
Carolyn Crenshaw,
Mm.
and it was moderated by Troy Paredes.
Yes.
And even in just the opening remarks,
Yeah.
you could kind of feel this tension, right?
No, absolutely. You could definitely tell there were some different
Right.
perspectives at play. Uyeda and Pierce, they seemed to be coming at it from a more open-minded approach. Like,
Yep.
let's figure this out.
Yeah, yeah,
And then Crenshaw, she was definitely more cautious
yeah,
about changing, well-established laws
right,
for just, for a single product category.
right.
Like crypto.
So today we're going to go deep
Yeah.
into the main arguments and kind of this tension
Mhm.
that came out during this really important meeting.
Absolutely.
So you can really understand how complicated crypto regulation is.
It's a thorny issue.
Yeah, it really is.
For sure.
Okay, so first up we had John Reed Stark.
Yeah.
And he really wanted regulation.
Right. He was definitely in the pro-regulation camp. And
Yeah.
I mean, he argued that, people who buy crypto, they're investors.
Right.
And so they deserve the protection
Right.
that the SEC gives
Right.
to investors.
And he told this like crazy story
Yeah, he did.
about getting death threats.
Death threats just
Yeah.
for saying that crypto should be regulated.
I mean, that really shows you
Oh, absolutely.
how passionate people are about
Yes. It's such a polarizing issue,
Yeah.
and I think it comes down to
this. Yeah.
you have this traditional idea of investor protection,
Right.
which has been around for a long time
Yeah.
with securities law. And then you have this new technology that's all about decentralization
Right.
and being free from like traditional authority.
Right.
So it's like these two worlds are colliding.
Yeah. And I feel like we see that all the time now with
Yeah.
crypto.
Absolutely.
So it's not just that he was saying this, but Stark actually said he read all these legal briefs
He did. Yeah.
from these cases where law firms were fighting the SEC.
Yep.
And from reading all of
Yeah.
them, he said that the crypto they were talking about were securities.
Yes. He concluded that they definitely fit the definition.
Right. And then
Yeah.
Benjamin Schifrin from Better Markets,
Mhm.
he brought up this really interesting point about
Yeah.
how crypto is shown to normal investors.
Right.
So he said that a lot of brokers now,
Mm-hmm.
they list crypto,
Yeah.
like right next to stocks and bonds.
Yeah. Alongside all the traditional assets.
Yeah, and ETFs and mutual funds.
Exactly.
So it's like right there.
It's all in the same menu,
Yeah.
for investors to see.
So his question was, if brokers are putting them all together,
Right.
why should crypto be treated differently?
Yeah. Why should it get special treatment?
Right.
Under the law.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
And then we got to talk about the Howey Test,
Oh, yes. The Howey Test.
because this is like the big thing.
Yeah. That's the key
Right.
for figuring this out.
Lee Reiners from Duke Financial Economics Center,
Mm-hmm.
he said that pretty much all crypto, except for Bitcoin and NFTs,
Right.
they fit the investment contract definition from the Howey Test.
Yeah. Because if you think about it,
Right.
most people buy tokens hoping that the price is going to go up
Right.
based on the work of like the developers of the project.
Can you quickly explain the Howey Test for people who don't know?
Sure. So basically, it's this legal framework that the Supreme Court came up with to figure out if something's an investment contract and therefore a security, and there are 4 parts to it. So first you have to invest money. Then it has to be in a common enterprise. Then you have to expect to make money. And that profit has to come from someone else's work.
Gotcha.
Not your own work.
Okay.
So like when you buy a token, you're putting in money.
Right.
You're hoping it goes up in value. Right.
And you're relying on the developers to make that happen.
Right.
So that often looks like an investment contract.
Yeah. And Reiners also pointed out that judges have been using the Howey Test for a while now to figure out these crypto cases.
It's well-established precedent at this point.
Yeah.
Like judges have been applying it
Right.
to digital assets.
So they've got Stark saying, protect the investors.
Yes.
We've got Schifrin saying that crypto's presented alongside all these other traditional securities. And then we've got Reiners saying this is how the Howey Test would apply.
Right.
So that's like a pretty strong argument.
Yeah, it seems like there's a case for SEC regulation.
But of course, there's another side.
There's always another side.
Yeah, so let's talk about
Let's do it.
the counter arguments.
Okay.
A lot of the counter arguments came from these lawyers.
Yeah, lawyers who work a lot in the crypto space. Yeah, so we had Coy Garrison from Steptoe 1 LLP and Rodrigo Serra from Cooley LLP.
Yeah.
And they had this idea of
regulatory humility.
Yeah, regulatory humility.
Which is an interesting concept.
What do they mean by that?
So basically they're saying the SEC shouldn't assume that it's the only one who can regulate crypto.
Right.
Like there are other players.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the CFTC.
Right.
You've got state regulators.
Yeah.
You've got Congress.
Yeah.
So they're saying we need to take a step back. And realize that this is a more complex regulatory landscape than just the SEC coming in.
Right.
And Garrison even said he liked what the SEC said about meme coins and proof of work mining.
Yeah, because they said that they're not going to regulate those.
Right.
Which is good because it gives clarity.
Exactly. It's like, okay.
Right.
Now we know where the boundaries are.
And I feel like that's what people want.
Yeah, people just want to know the rules.
Yeah.
So they can play by them.
Exactly.
And it's a tough balance, right? Because you want to give clarity.
Right.
But you don't want to stifle innovation.
Right. And then Collins Belton from Brookwood PC.
Yes.
He said, don't just focus on the investment contract thing.
Yeah.
He's like, don't just focus on the Howey Test.
Right. He's saying if we get too obsessed with whether something is or isn't an investment contract, we might miss the bigger picture of how this is all going to affect the crypto industry.
So he's worried about like the unintended consequences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like if we just focus on this narrow definition, we might accidentally harm innovation or growth in the space.
Okay. And then Teresa Goody-Gillen from Baker Hostetler.
Oh, yeah. She had a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, like a completely different way of looking at it.
Yeah, so she actually questioned whether the Howey Test even makes sense for crypto.
Really?
Like she was saying.
Yeah.
Maybe this whole framework that was designed for traditional securities. Maybe it doesn't work for this new type of technology.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and she went even further.
Yeah.
She said she thinks DLT... distributed ledger technology networks are like the fourth industrial revolution.
It's a big statement.
It is.
Yeah.
She sees it as like a paradigm shift.
Oh, wow.
Like a whole new way of doing business
and
managing resources. So she's saying this is way bigger than just like, is this token an investment contract? This is like a fundamental change.
Yeah.
And we need to think about regulation in a completely different way.
So basically from this roundtable, we had like two main sides.
Yeah, you had the people who were really focused on protecting investors. Like Stark, Schifrin, Reiners.
Right.
They want to use existing securities laws. Right.
To regulate crypto.
Right.
And then you had the other side.
Yeah.
Garrison, Sarah Belton, and Gillen, who are saying, hey, we need to be more flexible. We need to really understand this technology before we just, like, slap regulations on it.
Right. And the big question is, how do we actually regulate crypto?
Yeah.
It's not an easy question.
Not at all.
No, and thinking about what Gillen said, if this really is a huge change,
right?
Like a fundamental change, how do we change our laws and regulations to make it work?
Like, do we need to completely rethink things?
Yeah.
Or can we just kind of tweak what we already have?
Right.
And if we don't rethink things, are we going to accidentally stop this really innovative technology from growing?
That's a lot to think about.
It is. It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But it's an important conversation to have, for sure.
For sure.
All right. Well, that's our deep dive for today.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
See you next time.
See ya.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.